Okay, so next thing we're going to talk about is alternative forms of the circle equation. One of the ways that you guys will see your circle equation written is you will see it as ax squared plus bx plus cy squared plus dy plus e equals r or equals 0. Wowza. How are you going to graph an equation if it looks like this? Right now, a lot of your guys' faces probably look like or. But listen, guys, you just need to relax. We've already done this. This is just completing the square. Okay, now, some of us were a little bit shaky on our completing the square, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you guys your completing the square steps. So if I have an x squared minus 2x plus 3 equals 0. We'll start with that there. Okay, now, when we go through completing the square steps, the first thing that we have to do is we have to make sure that there is a 1 in front of our x squared. There is a 1 in front of our x squared, so we're good on that. Once you guys make sure there's a 1 in front of your x squared, you're going to then need to subtract your constant term, the number that's by itself. We're going to move that to the other side. And I'm going to go ahead and leave a space. And I want you guys to remember that we are leaving that space there because we're going to come up with a magic number. And that magic number is going to force this thing to factor. That magic number will force this thing to factor. Okay? So how do we find our magic number? Well, we're going to take our b term. So our b term is negative 2. And I'm going to take negative 2, and I'm going to divide it by 2. You always divide it by 2. Some of the classes will be like, well, what do I divide it by? It's always divided by 2. So I'm going to take negative 2, and I'm going to divide that by 2. When I do that, I get a negative 1. After you divide it by negative 1, the next thing you need to do is then square it. So when I take a negative 1 squared, I get a positive 1. Okay? What we've just now done is we have found our magic, and I can't spell number, or I can't spell magic. We have found our magic number. Okay? Now, when we have that magic number, we said that we were leaving a space for it on this side, right? So I'm going to go ahead and plug in my magic number. My magic number is a positive 1. So I'm going to plug in that positive 1 there. I get an x squared minus 2x plus 1. And that equals, now, it equals negative 3. But if I just added negative 1 to this side of the equation, I probably need to do something to this side as well to make sure that it stays balanced. So if I add negative 1 on one side of the equation, I have to add negative 1 on the other side of the equation. Crap. Guys, I made a boo-boo real quick on making this problem here. Instead of having that be a positive 3, I want to make this an x squared minus 2x minus 3 equals 0. All that does is that means that we need to add 3 to both sides. Okay, so everything's still the same. Okay, I just messed up the sign. That should have been a negative instead of a positive. Okay? All right, so we found our magic number. Our magic number, we are going to force this to factor. And I force it to factor into an x something squared. Okay? Now, what goes in that open space? Because I said it was x something squared. Well, shh, that's our secret number. Negative 1, it's right in the middle and you don't even notice it. We call negative 1 our secret number. And that secret number, negative 1, is what's going to go in the parentheses with the x. Okay? So our whole goal was we were trying to find our magic number because that magic number was going to get plugged in and force it to factor. But in the process, we also found a secret number, and your secret number is always going to go in the parentheses with your x there. Okay? And you guys can check my work on that. X squared minus 2x plus 1, that does factor into an x minus 1 squared. Okay? And then on the other side of it, I've got a 3 plus 1, so that equals 4. Okay? Now, when we do completing the square, this is actually as far as we need to go for what we're going to do for our circles. But if you're curious, after we get to this point, we would want to square root both sides. That gives me an x minus 1 equals a plus or minus 2. Once I get those two equations, I'm going to solve x minus 1 equals 2, x minus 1 equals negative 2, and I find that x equals 3, and I find that x equals negative 1. Okay? So that's completing the square, but really the only parts that we need to know for it is basically just this part right here. Finding your magic and your secret number and plugging them in. Okay? So, let's do that with some circles then. I've got x squared minus 4x plus y squared plus 6y plus 8. The first thing I need to do, is there a number in front of my x squared or my y squared? No, there's not, so we're good. We are then going to move our 8 over to the other side of the equation. Okay? And when I do that, I'm going to have an x squared minus 4x, and I need to leave a space because I'm going to have to find a magic number. Then I'm going to have a plus y squared plus 6y, and again, I need to leave a space because I'm going to be looking for a magic number to go in there. So we've got to find 2 magic numbers this time. So I'm going to start out looking at my b term. Negative 4 divided by 2 gives me negative 2. And then I need to square it, which gives me a 4. Remember, 4 is our magic number. Negative 2 is our secret number. Okay? So since 4 is my magic number, that means I need to add it in on this side of the equation. And when I add that 4 in, that's going to force this x to factor into an x something squared. Okay? So what goes in there with the x? Well, that would be my secret number. So this becomes an x minus 2 squared. Okay? So I found my magic number with my y's, or with my x's. Now I need to find my magic number with my y's. I've got a positive 6 there. So I'm going to take a positive 6 divided by 2, gives me a 3. 3 squared gives me a 9. Again, 9 is my magic number. 3 is my secret number. Okay? So I'm going to go So I'm going to plug in my secret number, which is this positive 9. And then I force that to factor into a y something squared. Well, what goes in there with the y? That would be my secret number, so I'm going to have a y plus 3 squared. Okay? Now, the mistake that everybody makes, okay, is you guys added a 4 and you added a 9. So you've added 13 on this left side of the equation. Remember, we have to keep that balance. So if you add 4 on one side, you must add 4 to the other side of the equation. If I add 9 on one side, I must add 9 on the other side of the equation. Okay, so 9 plus 4 gives me 13 minus 8 gives me a 5. So the equation of the circle that I get, x minus 2 squared plus y plus 3 squared equals 5. Now we've got that set up. I can tell you what the center is. The center is 2, negative 3. And I can tell you what the radius is. The radius here would be a square root of 5. Okay? Let's do one more just to make sure you guys got it. Oops, too far. Not far enough. Okay, 2x squared plus 4x plus 2y squared minus 4y minus 14 equals 0. This one we're not ready to do yet. You cannot have a number in front of your x squared and a y squared. And every year I have kids, they'll say, okay, well, what if you have a 3x squared and a 2y squared? That's not a circle. The only way it's a circle is if the number in front of these x's and y's is the same. So if you have a 2 here and a 3 here, that's not a circle. I'm not going to ask you to graph that. Okay? But since those do both have 2's in front of it, we need to divide everything up here by 2 first. I've got an x squared plus 2x plus y squared minus 2y minus 7 equals 0. Okay? I'm ready to complete the square now. So x squared plus 2x, leave a space, plus y squared minus 2y equals 7, because I'm going to move that 7 over to the other side. Let's find my magic number. 2 divided by 2 gives me 1. Square that, gives me 1. So this one's nice. My magic and my secret are the same number. Add my magic number in here. Now if I add my magic number in on the left, I also have to add my magic number in on the right. Okay? Then this part down here factors into an x something squared. What goes in there? Well, that would be our secret number, which is a positive 1. Okay, now let's do our y's. Y squared minus 2y. So I'm going to take a negative 2 divided by 2. Gives me negative 1. Square it. Gives me a positive 1. Positive 1 is my magic number. Negative 1 is my secret number. So I'm going to add my magic number in. Remember, if I add it on the left, I have to add it on the right as well. Okay. I force this to factor into a y something squared. What goes in there? Well, that would be my secret number. So I'm going to have a y minus 1 squared. Equals 7 plus 1 plus 1 gives me 9. There is my equation of my circle. Okay, if I wanted to graph this, it'd be negative 1, 1 for my center. My radius would be 3. Okay, so that is graphing circles that are in what's called the general form. Looks pretty confusing, but really all you're doing is you're just completing the square 2 separate times.